Project Resolve has taken Division 2's unloved weapons and brandsets and buffed them so that now almost any build is viable for 99% of content, and that has potentially ruined the game.
And when everyone's super, no one will be.
So I'm taking on the challenge to save the game by creating a build that has received no buffs, deals most of its damage through non-damage dealing skills, and provides as much protection as a leaky condom, and putting it up against the 1% of content those buff builds struggle with. The 9 Legacy Manhunts take you from August the 20th, just after the events of Warlords of New York, past Feylar's betrayal and Captain Lewis's defection, through to October the 18th when the recruiter was finally tracked down. But you must be wondering about the build that I'm going to use, because surely I must be making it up about the non-damage dealing skills that let me deal so much damage. I'm not.
And don't call me Shirley.
The idea for the build came from John Woo's Mission Impossible 2, which in addition to his trademark gun fu, also featured a genetically modified disease similar to the Division, and what I will be building on, a Typhoid Mary. And to become the ultimate Typhoid Mary, I will be using a jammer pulse and a shock jab. I know, right now you must be thinking, what the fuck is he talking about? Well, both of these skills have one thing in common. They apply a stasis effect, which will proc the talent on the VAR mask, Toxic Delivery. The Jammer Pulse hits everything within 26 meters, making it a great way to infect groups of enemies in cover, while the Shock Track can be deployed to catch enemies who invade my personal space. For this to deliver big damage though, I needed to buff the VAR mask debuff to its max, which I did in 3 ways. But more on that shortly, as it's time to jump into the Legacy Manhunts. In the first, you must track down Jupiter on Roosevelt Island. This manhunt threw cleaners and flame turrets at me and introduced a unique mechanic in modified EMPs. Roosevelt Island is a relatively big stronghold, but once you work out how to take down the modified EMPs, it is straightforward, and pretty soon Jupiter had met Uranus. And yes, I know that joke doesn't really work, but fuck it, I'm leaving it in. Now I'm sure that you've noticed that I'm using a shotgun with this build. But this is no ordinary shotgun. It is, of course, the exotic shotgun Scorpio, whose talent Septic Shock applies a stasis effect and procs Toxic Delivery. Scorpio has plenty of stopping power on its own, but combined with the VAR mask, it is more toxic than a teenage girl on a Matt Gates vacation. The second Manhunt Hornet introduces its own unique mechanics. The Eclipse Virus. Clouds of this are deadly, attacking your health. In one section you're forced to pass through large clouds of it, only kept alive by a hacked Warhound fitted with a repair trap. If I delayed too long in these clouds, it was game over. This was made even more fatal with my build because one of the ways I'm buffing my damage output is through the chest talent Glass Cannon. The extra 25% damage output is a massive buff to Toxic Delivery's debuff that comes with a very serious downside. To offset the impact of this, I'm running armor regen on 5 pieces of my gear, which should get me back to full armor quickly. The damage that Toxic Delivery does is based off 2 things: the damage that my concussion grenade does and how much stasis effect attribute that I'm running. So this build takes both of these to the max. Additional explosive damage comes from 2 pieces of the Group A brand set, 1 piece of China Light, and the Demolitionist specialization. Combining all of these buffs my concussion grenade damage up to a whopping 2 million. My status effects attribute is at 80%, with 60% coming from an attribute on each piece of gear, 1 piece of the Golden Gear brand set, and 1 piece of Electrique. These combine to buff Toxic Delivery's damage to 1.8 million, which is increased by 25% through Glass Cannon and 10% from an Opportunistic on my backpack to deliver 2.5 million damage every time a stasis effect is applied. It was during this manhunt that an odd thing happened. I actually started to enjoy playing the game again, because while this build is actually a really good build and will complete all the heroic content you want, it does make you play in a completely different way. I couldn't just overpower enemies with my striker enhanced massive buffed weapons. I needed to strategize, to draw enemies to choke points where the shock trap and shotgun could take down even the toughest enemies safely. I actually had to think. and it was fucking brilliant. So I plotted and fought my way past Barden Schaefer in a hot dog eating contest at Coney Island. I lured Fei Lau into a presidential lodge at Camp White Oak and showed her my large boomstick, and I stunlocked large chungus to death with Captain Lewis. I equipped 3 skill haste mods onto my gear so that I could use my skills as often as possible, letting me proc toxic delivery when needed. Now sadly, this is where Massive let me down, as General Anderson was playing hide and seek with me, and there was no indication how my fresh level 40 character could end his childish games. And Stavepipe was locked behind the Barden Schaefer manhunt, which I had already completed, so it was on to the rescue of Mari Singh, and one of the most difficult starts to a mission, because after solving the insane mechanics of the border wall by shooting a button, I was confronted by robot dogs that were immune to all damage and weren't responding to my dog handling expertise. But this was awesome, because I came up with a strategy to get past them, using my jammer pulse to stun, letting me move across the very open area, before using toxic delivery to take out the final server, without ever exposing myself to them. In fact, this manhunt was my favourite, because it required me to really think my way through it, using bottlenecks and my trap to take down the many elite enemies, chungas and robot dogs. And then, I fucked it up. In the last section before the final boss fight, try this build out. In a time where the game is flooded with brain dead builds because they all work to some extent, this one will make you see the game in a different light and start enjoying it again.